Hello, I'm Esther Githu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Flooding wreaks havoc in war-torn Sudan, killing more than 130 people, mainly in the country's north and east. In this election year, immigration is a hot topic for voters in the United States as they decide who will occupy the White House. There are stark differences in policy between the two presidential candidates. And the resurgence and spread of Mpox keeps health officials worldwide on high alert. We'll have more details coming up in our health report. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in East Africa, where over 130 people have died in war-torn Sudan as a result of heavy rains and massive flooding this year, according to Sudan's health ministry. The country is experiencing an intense rainy season with sporadic torrential flooding, mainly in the country's north and east. VOA's Philip Alexiou has the details.
From overhead, a region drowned from rain, floodwaters, and mudslides, affecting some 50,000 people, according to the UN, citing local authorities. Large areas are inaccessible. The Arbat Dam is about 38 kilometers northwest of Port Sudan on the Red Sea state. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric says preliminary reports indicate the breach caused extensive damage in 20 villages downstream from the dam.
Our humanitarian partners and local authorities are assessing the affected areas and will have additional clarity on the extent of the damage in the coming days. The Arbat Dam is a crucial facility in Port Sudan, serving as a primary source of fresh water for the city. The reported damage is expected to have a substantial impact on water supplies to Port Sudan, worsening the humanitarian situation.
Flooding only heaps onto the miserable situation the civil war is causing between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid forces, which began in April 2023. Sudan's army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan visited the area, meeting and talking with the locals. The government's rainy season task force said 132 people have been killed in floods across the country, up from 68 2 weeks ago. Those that survive end up digging graves for those lost, covering them with what they can find, a metal sheet or some wood. United Nations agencies say at least 118,000 people have been displaced by the rains this year. And while Saudi and U.S.-led ceasefire talks in Jeddah continue, the war goes on as Sudan's infrastructure gets destroyed by fighting and nature. And half of the 50 million population in the country lacks sufficient food. Philip Alexiou, VOA News.
The U.S. presidential election campaigns of Republican Donald Trump and Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris are clashing over next month's debate. The vice president's team is seeking a return to open microphones, while her Republican rival is threatening to pull out entirely, suggesting the previously agreed upon American network ABC is biased. Meanwhile, immigration is one of the top issues for voters as they decide who will occupy the White House. VOA senior Washington correspondent Caroline Persutti reports.
This was a gold mining town, the richest strike in the state of Arizona at the time.
Now a ghost town.
Yeah.
Patty Burris lives here with Beano, her 38-year-old donkey.
Come here, buddy. There you go.
Burris says she's tired of undocumented migrants sneaking across her land from the Mexican border. Former President Donald Trump gets her vote.
He's going to deport them. Yes, I am all for that. Absolutely. Get them out of here, and he can do it. He knows how.
While president, Donald Trump ordered that a 740-kilometer wall be built at the U.S. southwestern border. This is the Arizona part of it. On his first day in office, Joe Biden paused any new construction.
They could have had it completed in 3 weeks. But
Donald Trump returned to an Arizona border wall last Thursday, although the Washington Post reports this section he visited was built before he became president.
Because there's never been a border in the whole world that's leaked like this border with all those millions and millions of criminals coming through.
Democratic voters at their convention say their party is more tolerant.
Immigrants, we belong, the neighbors, we take care of each other. That's really what it's all about.
If elected, Vice President Kamala Harris promises a path to citizenship and the return of a bipartisan immigration bill that died in Congress.
The Border Patrol endorsed it. But Donald Trump believes a border deal would hurt his campaign. So he ordered his allies in Congress to kill the deal.
Back at the ghost town.
So Harris would not control the border as
Don't
much
believe a word she says. Where's she been in the last 4 years?
Nobody stops by the old deserted town much anymore. Burris says she'd like to go back to the time when she saw more tourists come through than migrants. Carolyn Presutti, VOA News, Pierce, Arizona.
Vice President Kamala Harris has reaffirmed her support for Israel, signaling that her administration would not differ from President Joe Biden's on its Gaza war policy. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has more from Chicago.
Pro-Palestinian protesters pushed hard, but they did not change Kamala Harris' support for Israel. She underscored it in her acceptance speech as the party's presidential nominee, even as she affirmed the rights of Palestinians.
President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Calls for a weapons embargo went unheeded. The platform agreed by the party Monday recommitted support for Israel, a ceasefire for hostage release deal, and a two-state solution. Harris has been more vocal on protecting Palestinian life, but former and current aides say her Israel policy is unlikely to diverge from President Joe Biden.
I was her national security advisor in the Senate. I know that she is a staunch supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship because it is in our national security interest.
Foreign policy is determined by much more than public opinion, even as polls show an increasing number of Americans want their leaders to reduce support for Israel.
During the convention, 270 delegates demanded Harris to condition aid to Israel if she is elected. Driving this movement are the 30 uncommitted delegates who have withheld their votes for her. That is a tiny amount, less than 1%, and she was still nominated overwhelmingly.
Uncommitted delegates say they're not discouraged.
I've found that a lot of people are really with us on this issue, but we don't know where to begin or how to get involved. So I'm feeling like we've already made tremendous progress.
Gaza is one issue where Democrats find disagreement. Pro-Palestinian delegates were unhappy their speakers were only given an opportunity to speak on the sidelines, unlike the parents of an American hostage held by Hamas who addressed the convention. Pro-Israel delegates say the issue should not create division within the party.
We're all concerned about the civilians of Gaza, but we're also concerned about the people of Israel and their safety and security.
Scholars of social movements say it takes time and work to turn protests into agenda.
Through the work of building coalitions and ultimately negotiating and compromising and finding a way forward that almost never gets all the way to where the protesters hoped it would get, but is nevertheless an important change.
Uncommitted National Movement spokesperson Laila Elabet said they're in it for the long game.
Our strategy is not to abandon the Democratic Party, but to essentially revolutionize the Democratic Party and listen to its core base.
Pragmatism is key, said Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who is Muslim and sympathetic to the Palestinian cause.
You need to win to have power. Harris, the numbers are up everywhere. The chances for success are higher.
So although none of their demands were met, pro-Palestinian delegates say they're determined to push for their cause. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Chicago.
The Israeli military says it has rescued a hostage, 52-year-old Qaid Farhan al-Qadi, from a tunnel during a complex operation in southern Gaza. Al-Qadi was one of 8 members of Israel's Arab Bedouin minority who were abducted on October 7th. He was working as a guard at a packing factory in Kibbutz Magen, one of several farming communities that came under attack. Negotiators in Cairo are continuing meetings aimed at halting the fighting and bringing Israeli and foreign hostages home in an exchange deal for Palestinian prisoners. Although there has been optimism from the United States, which is supporting the talks along with Egypt and Qatar, Hamas and Israel have been trading blame for a lack of progress. Hundreds of thousands protested across Nigeria earlier this month due to inflation and economic hardships, which have cost the economy millions of dollars. Similar protests by young activists dubbed Gen Z have also occurred in Kenya, Uganda, and other countries. To learn more about the protesters, VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke to Yetunde Odubesan Omede, a global affairs and politics professor at the State University of New York Farmingdale State College.
When you have a situation where the youth continue to outpace and outnumber other age demographics, and there are not enough opportunities for them to excel and succeed, there are not enough labor force or job infrastructure that are created where they can go into the labor market and assume jobs. And so what happens when you have a restless youth population who do not have any means or any way out, and how do they fend for themselves and their families? You create an atmosphere and create an environment that leads exactly to this type of unrest. Politicians need to take a look and see this, right? They need to take a look, because what happens is that we live in the technological age. This is a youth that were born during the digital age. They are the controllers of the digital economy, right? They are the controllers of digitization. And for them not to be able to give opportunities to, I would say, be able to express their skill sets in the best way, right? What is a degree if it cannot be put to use, right? And it's not only the responsibility of the individual, it's also the responsibility of the government to ensure that there is a flourishing labor market and labor workforce and opportunities. And so as much as we want to say, please invest or bring investment to the continent and bring investment to Nigeria, that investment also has to turn into opportunities of employment for the young people who put themselves to school so that they can have a livelihood and make something of themselves. These riots are examples of this. There's the very reason.
For example, the intellectual balance of power has been shifting in the African youth's favor. They are more educated, they have access to Ivy League schools, even here in the United States, because of this information age. So they know what's happening all over the world. They see how governments are running their governments, or they see how these politicians are running their governments, and they're like, no, we've had enough. How would you respond to critics who say that maybe the governments are not paying attention to some of their needs?
It has to be true, right? So if they are in the streets protesting, if they're doing every single means to get the attention of the government, or to get the attention of the elected leaders, or to get the attention of the president, that means they're desperately seeking some type of way forward, or desperately seeking some form of leadership. There's nothing wrong in communication, right? There's nothing wrong in talking to a population of people who feel desperate, who don't know where to go, who go to social media to vent their pain and frustration, who are trying to find ends meet on how do I pay my children's school fees, how do I keep a roof over my head, how do I buy the necessary things to just eat, rice, tomatoes, all of those things. For a long, long time, people have been saying that, look, if the government doesn't do something, or if the government doesn't act fast, or the government is not strategic in the way that they communicate, what you'll end up seeing is that these young people who have been sort of sitting at the sideline, who's been grumbling and who's been grunting and who's been sharing them frustrations amongst one another, will now come into the forefront to now lead campaigns and now lead social movements that will garner international attention. And I think that's what's happening now. When there's nowhere to run, people end up running to the street.
That was Yetunde Odubesan Omede, Professor of Global Affairs and Politics at the State University of New York, Farmingdale State College, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, the resurgence and spread of Mpox keeps health officials on high alert. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we take you to the U.S. state of Maine, where a global program brings together youth from regions that are deeply divided by conflict to help them learn to understand one another and how communities can coexist in peace despite diversity. Join me, Vincent McCory, on the next edition of Straight Talk Africa as we take you inside the seats of Peace Summer Camp and learn more about the program and how it's changing perceptions and attitudes across conflict lines.
In other news, in just 2 months, the Kenyan-led international security force deployed to Haiti is making significant progress in tackling gang violence, according to Kenyan police. The force is helping Haitian police take back control of critical infrastructure, including the airport, from gang control. The Nigerian Medical Students Association is praising the rescue of 20 medical students and 7 others from kidnappers over the weekend. Authorities say no ransom was paid. The students from the universities of Jos and Maiduguri were abducted August 15th when their motorcade was attacked as they traveled to a convention in southeastern Enugu state. And Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez begins a 3-day tour of West Africa Tuesday as his nation struggles to contain the flow of migrants making the dangerous voyage by boat to the Canary Islands. His first stop is Mauritania, followed by Gambia and Senegal. The coastal 3 nations are the main departure points used by smugglers to launch overcrowded boats. Artificial intelligence is rapidly becoming prevalent across various sectors in Ghana, including healthcare. Young innovators are using AI to develop cutting-edge solutions. Isaac Kalezi explains from Accra.
MinoHealth AI Labs, a tech group led by young innovators, is pioneering the use of artificial intelligence or AI in healthcare. They have developed an AI tool that quickly and accurately diagnoses ailments, helping to address the shortage of healthcare workers in the country. Health workers at this diagnostic center in Koforidua, a town in Ghana's eastern region, are busy examining scanned X-ray images of patients. They are assisted by generative AI, a tool designed with artificial intelligence that quickly detects and diagnoses various ailments by analyzing the uploaded scanned images. The platform can generate a medical report, prescribe medication, and recommend treatment procedures, easing the workload of radiologists like Daniel Jima.
One key thing that I love about the AI is the fact that you are able to ask follow-up questions even when you have asked your first question.
Jima is also impressed with the tool's ability to analyze 2 different images and provide a diagnosis all at the same time.
The platform is able to differentiate between the fact that you have 2 images put side by side, the left one is this, the right one is this, and give a comprehensive information about it. That's a fantastic thing about AI that I really love as well.
Darlington Akogo is the brain behind this AI tool. His team at MinoHealth AI Labs first developed it 2 years ago, but revamped it this year to make it more efficient. Ghana has more than 90 radiologists, serving a population of over 30 million, according to the Ghana Association of Radiologists. With the shortage of health workers in many hospitals in Ghana, Akogo wants his AI tool to fill the gaps.
The goal is that we want everyone to get access to quality health care, regardless of where they are. So let's empower our health workers by leveraging the AI solutions that we've built.
According to the World Health Organization, non-communicable diseases account for 43% of mortality in Ghana, and the need for an early diagnosis and treatment is vital. But many health facilities have not yet fully embraced the technology because a huge number of health workers and patients are still skeptical. Jima himself has been a skeptic all these years, so his facility has put a system in place to ensure quality assurance that provides a safety net for AI-assisted diagnosis. All diagnostic reports generated by the AI tool are always reviewed by a certified medical doctor.
I was a bit skeptical about having to use AI to diagnose people's conditions. Whatever the AI tells us, we don't just run with it. And in most cases, we realize that they tally. When they don't tally, of course, the human diagnosis overrides the AI, and that's what we do. Yeah.
Akogo's technology has been certified by Ghana's Food and Drugs Authority, but he's aware of concerns about AI and the dangers associated with it potentially diagnosing patients wrongly. He says clinicians are also aware of his tool's limitations and are encouraged to always ensure that doctors have the final say on AI diagnostic reports.
Right, so if you have like complex MRI of the brain and you want to pick up something like a stroke, it cannot. So we let you know that it cannot do that. So to address those dangers is finding the limitations of the AI system and making it clear to clinicians. And also there's a safeguard method that we apply, which is that don't let the AI system have the final say. Always let a clinician have the final say.
For now, thanks to the power of technology and its promising results, patients continue to visit facilities like this one, knowing they will receive accurate and fast diagnosis of their ailments so they can start their treatment without delay. Isaac Kalaji, VOA Africa, Accra, Ghana.
And it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with an update on cholera and the resurgence of Mpox. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. Hello, everyone. Sudanese health authorities say the country is being hit hard by a deadly cholera outbreak that has infected hundreds of people in recent weeks. The outbreak is threatening refugees and displaced communities. Sudan is being ravaged by a 16-month conflict and devastating floods. The United Nations Refugee Agency is reporting that the spread of cholera is of particular concern in states hosting refugees, mainly Kassala, Gadaref, and Jazira states. Cholera is a highly contagious infection transmitted through the ingestion of contaminated food or water that causes diarrhea. The World Health Organization says it can lead to severe dehydration and possible death within hours if not treated. According to the International Organization for Migration, over 10 million people have been forced to flee their homes since fighting in Sudan began.
I brought her to the clinic this morning. The doctors examined her, checked her weight, gave her medicine, and her condition has since improved.
We work in coordination with our health partners to train health workers, assess cases, equip isolation spaces in the refugee camps, and train volunteers who are raising awareness about cholera and its risk in the camp.
Now, scientists studying the new Mpox strain that is spreading in the Democratic Republic of Congo say the virus is changing faster than expected, and often in areas where experts lack the funding and equipment to properly track it. A new strain of the virus known as Clade 1b has the world's attention again after the WHO declared a new health emergency. The strain is a mutated version of Clade 1, a form of Mpox spread by contact with infected animals that has been endemic in Congo for decades. Half a dozen scientists in Africa, Europe, and the United States say there are numerous unknowns about the virus itself, its severity, and how it is transmitting, complicating the response. The resurgence and spread of mpox has health officials worldwide on high alert. This is the second time in just over 2 years that the WHO has declared mpox to be a global emergency. Dr. Muhumuza Omar, a public health expert with the Africa CDC and a Yali Fellow, elaborates on some reasons for the resurgence of outbreaks such as mpox and what can be done.
The first reason is, do we have enough vaccination for mpox on the continent, right? Because one of the ways to reduce diseases like COVID-19 in the past was through vaccination, and we create something called herd immunity. As we speak today, we still face the challenge of vaccine inequity. So we have a lot of vaccine inequities on the continent. Even while we have announced it as a public health emergency, we do not have enough vaccines to vaccinate people or people at risk, right? That's the biggest challenge. So there's re-emergence of mpox. Secondly, are we following the One Health approach to addressing critical epidemics like mpox? You see, the One Health approach is one that looks at how people engage with animals as well as the environment, right? Now, we have had people encroach onto the natural ecosystem. So when I say encroaching into the natural ecosystem, you have people going into the rainforests, and now they are interacting with potential carriers of the mpox, the monkeys and the rats, right? So it literally means that we need to employ a One Health approach that looks at both human, environment, and animal health. So when you comprehensively look at that, you then understand that environment plays a critical role in addressing healthcare issues, as well as animals play a critical role in propelling or addressing these health concerns. But then lastly, we need to talk about the question of risk communication. But risk communication is very key, because you recognize that we have mpox and it's been declared as a public health emergency on the continent and globally. But when you go through the internet and everything, there's a lot of mis and disinformation regarding what mpox looks like, right? No one seemingly believes that mpox is actually an emergency, right? And you will have people who will be against the mpox vaccine like they've been against the previous vaccines like COVID, right? So we now need to employ a mechanism to address the mis and disinformation regarding emergencies, but also regarding vaccination as a whole. The misinformation does not stop there. We need to create trust in the system. Most Africans do not trust that their governments can actually deliver a good public health response to an epidemic like mpox, right? So through leveraging things like social media, we need to change the narrative.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on X at Linochmudu. Esther?
Thanks, Lino, for that health report. And thank you, viewers, for joining us today. We'll see you back here tomorrow.